Most of the habits shaping your life were never chosen consciously. They formed quietly over time, without asking for your permission. You didn't decide to reach for your phone the moment your mind feels empty. You didn't plan to avoid difficult thoughts by staying busy. You didn't sit down one day and choose the patterns you repeat daily. They were learned, repeated, and eventually accepted as normal. From an early age, your mind watched how discomfort was handled, how stress was avoided, how silence was filled, how attention was redirected. The brain remembers what reduces effort. If a behavior once created relief, even briefly, it was stored. Repeated relief became repetition. Repetition became routine. Routine became habit. And habit slowly became identity. Most people think habits are built through discipline, but the strongest habits are built through familiarity. You repeat them not because they serve your future, but because they feel known, because they require no thought, because they don't challenge your nervous system. This is why change feels strange at first, not painful, just unfamiliar. When you try to behave differently, your body reacts before your logic does. It pulls you back toward what feels safe, what feels expected, what feels predictable. Scrolling instead of thinking, delaying instead of deciding, avoiding instead of engaging. These choices don't look serious. They feel small, even harmless. But small choices repeated every day quietly shape the direction of a life. You can be intelligent, capable, and ambitious, and still be guided by habits you never consciously chose. That isn't weakness, it's automation. The mind prefers efficiency over awareness. Once something works once, it keeps it. This audiobook is not about forcing change, it's about seeing clearly. Because the moment a habit becomes visible, it loses its power to run unnoticed. Awareness interrupts repetition, and interruption is where change begins. In the next chapter, you'll learn how the mind enters autopilot, why it prefers it, and how most people live years of their life without realizing they've stopped choosing. Control doesn't return through effort. It returns through awareness. The human mind is built to conserve energy. Whenever it can, it shifts control to autopilot. Autopilot is not a flaw. It is a survival system. Every day, your brain processes thousands of signals. What deserves attention? What can be ignored? What feels urgent? What can be postponed? To avoid overload, the mind turns repeated behaviors into automatic responses. Once something feels familiar, it stops being questioned. This is how awareness fades without you noticing it. On autopilot, you are not actively choosing your actions. You are repeating them. You feel silence without deciding to. You react before understanding why. You move from moment to moment with little memory of how you arrive there. When life feels fast, it is often because choice is absent. Autopilot prefers what is predictable. It avoids uncertainty, even when uncertainty carries growth. If a situation feels uncomfortable, the mind reaches for the quickest known relief, not the best option, the familiar one. Distraction replaces focus. Comfort replaces progress. Reaction replaces response. None of these feel harmful in the moment. They feel normal. This is why people mistake ease for correctness. If something feels effortless, they assume it must be right. But autopilot does not evaluate meaning. It does not care about long-term direction. It only cares about efficiency. Days begin to resemble each other. Reactions repeat. Opportunities pass quietly. This is how time speeds up. Not because life is full, but because attention is absent. You do not lose control in a dramatic way. You give it away in small, unnoticed moments. Awareness is the exit. The moment you notice when an action happens automatically, the loop loosens. You do not need to fight the mind. You need to observe it. Noticing where attention goes, where comfort is chosen, where reaction replaces intention. This is how choice returns. In the next chapter, you will learn how invisible daily patterns form, why they repeat even when you try harder, and why effort alone never breaks them. Awareness slows time, and when time slows, direction becomes possible again. Most days are not controlled by big decisions. They are shaped by small behaviors that repeat so often you stop seeing them. You don't notice the pattern, you notice the outcome. Days end with the same feeling of unfinished intention. Conversations follow familiar emotional paths. Focus disappears at the same moments again and again. These are invisible patterns. They form when the mind links a situation to a response. Stress appears and distraction follows. Uncertainty surfaces and delay feels reasonable. Discomfort rises and avoidance steps in quietly. Over time, the moment between trigger and response disappears. The mind stops asking questions. It moves straight to action. This is why people say they don't know what went wrong. Nothing went wrong. The pattern simply completed itself. Invisible patterns feel logical while they happen. I'll do it after this. This won't take long. I deserve a break first. Each thought sounds sensible. Each action feels minor. But repeated daily, they create momentum in a specific direction. Doing more inside the same patterns does not change outcomes. Effort alone cannot break a loop it never questions. You can work harder, plan better, set stronger goals, and still end up repeating the same results, because behavior is following familiarity, not intention. Patterns survive motivation. They survive discipline. They dissolve through awareness. When you slow down enough to notice the exact moment a response begins, space opens. That space is subtle, but it matters. It's the moment when you catch yourself reaching, reacting, escaping before the behavior completes. Most people miss this space because patterns move fast. They rely on speed and distraction. They rush you past choice. The moment attention arrives, speed drops. You may not change the behavior immediately. That's not the goal. The goal is seeing. Seeing when distraction replaces clarity. Seeing when comfort replaces direction. Seeing when habit replaces choice. This seeing weakens repetition. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels quiet, like interrupting a sentence before it finishes. In the next chapter, you'll understand how comfort itself becomes a habit, and why the desire to feel okay right now often controls more of your life than you realize. Change does not begin with force. It begins when repetition can no longer hide. Comfort is rarely recognized as a habit. It doesn't look like one. It disguises itself as rest, as balance, as self-care. But comfort, when repeated without awareness, quietly becomes a pattern that shapes decisions. The mind is drawn to what feels okay right now, not what builds strength, not what creates direction, what reduces friction in the moment. This is how comfort gains control. When a task feels difficult, delay feels reasonable. When a conversation feels uncomfortable, silence feels safer. When effort feels heavy, distraction feels justified. None of these choices feel wrong. They feel understandable. That's what makes them powerful. Comfort does not shout. It whispers. It tells you there is always tomorrow, that now is not the right time, that pressure can wait. Day after day, these small decisions shape a life that feels soft on the surface and stuck underneath. Comfort trains the nervous system to avoid challenge, not dramatically, gradually. You don't lose the ability to act. You lose the tolerance to feel uncomfortable while acting. This is why growth often feels harder the longer it is delayed. The mind becomes sensitive. Resistance increases. Effort feels heavier than it is. People often say they lack discipline, but what they lack is exposure to discomfort. Comfort has replaced tolerance. This pattern is reinforced by relief. Every time discomfort is avoided, the mind relaxes. Relief feels good. What feels good gets repeated. Over time, comfort stops feeling like a choice. It becomes default. The goal is not to remove comfort from life. That is neither realistic nor healthy. The goal is to stop letting comfort decide. Discomfort is not a signal of danger. It is a signal of change. When you begin to stay present during mild discomfort without escaping immediately, the nervous system recalibrates. What once felt overwhelming becomes tolerable. What felt intolerable becomes manageable. This is how control returns, quietly. In the next chapter, you will see how environment silently builds and reinforces habits, and why willpower alone almost never works. Comfort does not have to be eliminated. It has to be placed, and placed behind intention, not in front of it. Most habits are not built by intention. They are built by surroundings. Your environment is quietly telling you what to do, where to place your attention, and how to behave long before motivation is involved. The room you wake up in, the screen you look at first, the people you spend time with, the objects within reach. These elements shape behavior without conversation. When something is easy to access, it becomes easy to repeat. When something requires effort, it is avoided even when you care about the outcome. This is why willpower feels unreliable, not because you are weak, but because you are fighting design. The mind follows the path of least resistance, always has. If distraction is nearby, focus weakens. If comfort is visible, effort fades. If temptation is constant, discipline becomes exhausting. You don't rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your systems. Environment works quietly. It doesn't persuade. It positions. A phone within arm's reach changes how you experience silence. A cluttered space changes how long focus lasts. A disruptive routine changes how decisions feel. Over time, these small signals train behavior. People often ask how to build better habits. The more useful question is how to remove unnecessary resistance. When positive behavior is made easier, it repeats naturally. When negative behavior is made harder, it fades without force. This is not discipline. This is alignment. Your environment should support the person you are becoming, not the habits you are trying to escape. Small adjustments matter. Where things are placed, when actions are triggered, what fills the first and last moments of the day. These details feel insignificant until they are repeated hundreds of times. Habit change does not begin with motivation. It begins with arrangement. You don't need more willpower. You need fewer battles. When the environment changes, behavior changes with less resistance. This is how progress becomes calm, predictable, sustainable. In the next chapter, you will see the habits that silently drain energy and why mental exhaustion often has nothing to do with effort. Change does not require intensity. It requires leverage. An environment is leverage you use every day, whether you notice it or not. Not all habits are obvious. Some don't waste time. They drain energy. These habits don't look harmful. They often look productive, responsible, reasonable. But they leave you feeling tired without knowing why. Mental energy is limited. Every small decision, every unresolved thought, every unnecessary reaction takes something from it. Over time, energy doesn't disappear. It leaks. Overthinking is one of the most common leaks. Replaying conversations, anticipating outcomes, trying to control what hasn't happened yet. The mind stays busy, but nothing moves forward. Another silent drain is constant stimulation, switching between screens, checking messages impulsively, filling every quiet moment with noise. This trains attention to scatter. Focus shortens. Clarity weakens. Multitasking feels efficient, but it fragments awareness. Tasks take longer. Mental fatigue increases. Energy is also lost through emotional resistance, avoiding uncomfortable feelings, suppressing frustration, distracting instead of processing. Unfelt emotion doesn't vanish. It stays active in the background, using energy continuously. This is why rest doesn't always restore you. Sleep may return the body, but the mind remains taxed. When energy is drained, habits regress. Good intentions collapse under exhaustion. People think they need more discipline. They don't. They need fewer drains. Reducing energy loss is more powerful than trying to increase motivation. When thinking becomes clearer, behavior stabilizes. Consistency becomes easier without force. Start by noticing what leaves you mentally depleted, not at the end of the day, but moment by moment. Which behaviors leave you scattered? Which thoughts remain unresolved? Which routines create noise instead of clarity? You don't need to remove everything. You need to stop leaking. Energy preserved becomes focus. Focus preserved becomes progress. In the next chapter, you'll learn how to break habits without force, why resistance often strengthens the very patterns you want to change, and how replacement works where suppression fails. Energy is not created through effort. It is protected through awareness. Most people try to break habits by fighting them. They rely on pressure, restriction, and intensity. And it works, briefly. Force creates resistance. The more you push against a habit, the more attention it receives. The mind interprets resistance as importance, and whatever feels important stays active. This is why suppression fails. It keeps the habit alive in the background. Breaking habits does not require dominance. It requires understanding. A habit exists because it serves a purpose. It reduces discomfort. It fills silence. It provides relief, even if temporary. Until that purpose is replaced, the habit returns. Most patterns don't disappear. They are displaced. Replacement is quieter than resistance. Instead of saying no, you redirect. When distraction appears, attention is given a different outlet. When avoidance shows up, engagement is simplified. When comfort pulls, structure provides direction. This is how change becomes sustainable. Habits fade when they are no longer useful, not when they are attacked. This is why small substitutions matter. A short pause instead of scrolling. A single focused action instead of delay. A breath of awareness instead of reaction. These moments feel minor, but repetition rewires familiarity. People fail at habit change because they aim too high. They remove structure without adding support. The mind does not respond well to emptiness. If a behavior is removed, something else must take its place. Replacement works because it respects the nervous system. It lowers friction. It avoids alarm. Over time, the old habit weakens from lack of reinforcement. The new behavior strengthens from consistency. This is how change feels calm instead of exhausting. Force demands constant effort. Replacement uses leverage. Progress comes from designing responses that match your capacity, not your ideal. You don't become disciplined by winning battles. You become disciplined by reducing the number of battles required. In the next chapter, you'll learn how to build silent power habits, the kind that look boring from the outside but slowly reshape identity from within. Lasting change does not come from intensity. It comes from arrangement. And when habits are arranged intelligently, they no longer need force to stay alive. The most powerful habits rarely look impressive. They are quiet, uncelebrated, easy to overlook. This is why they work. Silent power habits don't rely on emotion. They don't need motivation. They operate beneath excitement and fluctuation. These habits are small enough to repeat on days when energy is low and attention is scattered. Consistency is not created by intensity. It is created by reliability. A habit that can be done on your worst day is stronger than one that requires enthusiasm. Power habits form when actions become part of how you see yourself. You don't think about proving discipline. You simply act from alignment. These habits often feel boring. They don't bring immediate reward, but they create stability. Stability compounds. Reading a few pages consistently matters more than occasional long sessions. A brief moment of reflection outperforms rare breakthroughs. Over time, small actions train the nervous system to expect follow-through. Expectation becomes identity. Most people try to build habits that impress others. Silent power habits are built for minimum resistance. They fit into existing routines. They require little decision-making. They reduce mental load. When habits remove choice, consistency increases. This is where progress accelerates without pressure. You are no longer negotiating with yourself. You are executing familiar patterns. The key is selection. Choose habits that support direction, not image. Habits that clarify the mind. Habits that reduce friction. Habits that create calm structure. Over time, these quiet repetitions reshape how effort feels. What once required discipline becomes standard. This is why people suddenly appear consistent. Not because they changed overnight, but because identity shifted invisibly. The result is subtle confidence, not excitement. Trust. Trust that behavior will follow intention even when emotion does not. In the next chapter, you'll see how awareness of habits can change the course of a life, not through dramatic effort, but through steady observation and choice. Power does not announce itself. It accumulates. And in silence, it becomes permanent. Real change rarely begins with intensity. It begins with noticing. There was a man who believed he lacked discipline. He told himself this often until it sounded like truth. His days felt busy, but nothing seemed to move forward. Effort was present. Clarity was not. When he looked closely, he saw something uncomfortable. He was reacting, not choosing. Small moments shaped everything. Reaching for distraction when discomfort appeared. Delaying decisions because urgency felt overwhelming. Avoiding reflection because silence felt heavy. None of these choices felt dramatic. They felt normal. What changed his life was not a new routine. It was awareness. He began noticing when patterns started, not after they ended. Not how the day felt overall, but where control quietly slipped away. In moments of discomfort, he stayed present just a few seconds longer, enough to notice the urge, but not obey it immediately. That was the shift. Those seconds created space. In that space, choice returned. He did not overhaul his habits. He interrupted them. One pause led to another. One small decision followed attention, not impulse. Over time, the familiar pull weakened. Clarity increased. Days became less rushed. Choices felt deliberate. Confidence did not come from success. It came from trust. Trust that awareness would catch old patterns before they completed themselves. Results slowly followed. Behavior aligned. Energy stabilized. Nothing outside his life changed dramatically at first, but inside, control returned. This story is not unusual. It is repeatable. Change does not require a different personality. It requires noticing what is already happening. Awareness rewrites experience because it dissolves automation. When actions become visible, they stop running unseen. In the final chapter, you will learn how to take back control intentionally, designing days that reflect choice rather than habit, presence rather than reaction. Transformation does not arrive with noise. It settles quietly, and once it does, it stays. Taking back control does not mean managing every detail of life. It means choosing where attention lives. Control is not force. It is direction. When awareness replaces autopilot, days no longer disappear. Moments become visible. Choices become intentional. This does not happen all at once. Control returns gradually, through observation rather than pressure. You begin to notice where habits pull you away from clarity, not to judge them, not to eliminate them overnight, simply to see them. Seeing creates distance. Distance creates choice. When habits are visible, they stop operating in secrecy. Automation weakens. Presence strengthens. Life becomes less reactive. You respond instead of reflexively acting. You pause instead of escaping. You choose instead of repeating. This is how identity stabilizes. Consistency no longer depends on emotion. Discipline is no longer something you chase. It becomes part of how you relate to the day. Small choices accumulate quietly. They do not impress. They compound. The goal is not to control every habit. It is to design days that make the right habits easier to repeat. Structure supports clarity. Simplicity protects focus. Environment reinforces behavior. Over time, the mind learns to expect alignment, and expectation shapes action. This is how habits stop controlling you and start supporting you. Taking back control does not mean becoming rigid. It means becoming aware enough to act with intention. Life will still contain uncertainty. Discomfort will still appear, but reactions will no longer decide direction. Awareness will. This audiobook is not a conclusion. It is an invitation. An invitation to live deliberately, to notice before repeating, to choose before reacting. When awareness becomes a habit, control is no longer something you seek. It is something you live.